Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast chat. Today I want to talk with you guys a little bit about injuries and injury prevention. All right, this is what the leading experts say at this time, that the majority of injuries caused in the weight room are caused by overuse. Now, a lot of you guys will say, well, what about really bad form? Even really bad form, until overuse gets there, probably is not contributing that much to injuries, barring certain exceptions. In other words, if when you deadlift, you jerk the weight off the floor with arm bend, and then repeatedly slam the weight off the floor because you're trying to do quote unquote touch and go, but you're really just slamming it and bouncing it off the floor, okay, that might get you hurt. But it has to be really bad form, right? Really bad form, literally pulling with bending your elbows on a deadlift and bouncing off the floor, okay? That can contribute to injuries, but think about it also from an overuse perspective. What's more likely to get you hurt doing that? Doing 50 reps a week that way or 10 reps a week that way? Which one is more likely to hurt you? Well, doing 5 times as much of the same stupid thing. All right. And we know overuse is the leading cause. So what does that mean? Well, that means repeating the exact same movement with the same stress on the tendons and joints with no variation over and over and over. So we could run into the same issue with excessive training volume. This is one of the problems we run into when we get into these volume discussions of people saying, well, if we do double the volume, the data suggests, and I don't think their data is always right, that we might gain 1% more muscle per year. Maybe. That's what they're arguing, by the way. The people who are making those volume debates, they're arguing over 1%. They're arguing whether it exists or not. So keep that in mind when you're listening to these nuanced, detailed volume debates like you've seen guys like Lyle and Mike and other people do. Okay, this is what they're arguing about. They're arguing about 1% of your gains for the year. Well, you're doing 30 sets for a muscle group per week. You're also going to have a much higher chance of injury. The other thing to factor in, you're doing all that chasing that 1%. Also, the thing to consider is when we're talking overuse, bigger multi-joint movements spread the load more evenly across multiple joints and tendons throughout the body. You accrue slightly less overuse. This is one reason I say that most of your training should be big movements. It's not just about training economy. It's about getting a lot of your training through overlapping big movements, so that if you're doing multiple ones of those that hit the same muscle, we're technically accruing less overuse oftentimes doing that. But I'm going to go deeper into that, why we want to rotate movements. Because here's what happens. If you're doing tons of curls, for example, particularly tons of curls that put a lot of stress on the tendon, right? And a lot of single joint movements are more stressful on tendons in certain ways, right? They can cause more inflammation if we're not careful. You do too many curls, then guys start complaining, oh man, my biceps really hurt. My forearm hurts when I'm doing chin-ups. And I've seen that happen before. Well, what's causing it? Is the chin-up causing it, or are you feeling it during the chin-up? And you're probably just inflaming the tendons doing too many curls. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do curls if you want some bigger biceps. I'm saying you need to limit the amount you're doing. You need to limit the amount you're doing. So there is a supplemental movement, a smaller movement, to get a little more muscle growth off of the big multi-joint exercises you're doing. That's it. That's the role it serves. It's not your primary growth mechanism. Single joint movements will never be your ideal growth mechanism. They're supplemental work. And there's nothing wrong with doing them, but understanding their role for a muscle that may not be getting quite the stimulus you want it to get. That's it. How about you hear people talking about, their elbows hurt from the bench pressing. How much of that is from the type of tricep extensions they're doing? They're doing way too many tricep extensions of the wrong types. then they've noticed their elbows hurt when they bench. And bodybuilders are bad about that. Look how many bodybuilders you see always wrapping their elbows up with sleeves and stuff. I'm not saying some powerlifters, we don't see it too. We do. They're probably just accruing tendinitis from what they're doing. And it's an overuse issue. It's an overuse issue at the tendon level. So that's also my concern with a lot of the classic powerlifting paradigms in Russian squat programs and things. Well, I mean, they work pretty well, but you're squatting over and over and over and over and over. How long before that starts to accrue overuse doing the same type of squat with relatively high volumes week after week after week after week? No supplemental work. That's problematic. This is where we get overuse problems. For long your hips hurt, your knees hurt. It's not that squats are bad for your knees and hips. Right? It's not that squats are bad. It's overuse of the same movement. So how do we change this? One easy one, besides we'll get into rotating movements too. Here's an easy one, rotating rep ranges alone. Why? Muscles and tendons get taxed differently on a lot of lifts at different rep ranges. Right? They get taxed differently. The fatigue is different. Rotating variation in. If you're going to do a lot of stretch reflex work, let's say you're going to do a lot of dumbbell presses to help build your pecs up, and you're doing all that stretch reflex work. Well, that's eventually going to accrue inflammation on the tendon. Be willing to rotate it out for maybe a floor press. It doesn't put the same stretch on the tendon. A little more mid-range for the movement, right? It doesn't quite put the same stretch at the bottom. Still has enormous amounts of pectoral activation. We're moving big heavy weights. You could rotate the two. You rotate the two. Something I even do because even though I have my lifters live and die on good mornings. We love good mornings. What happens if they have only one barbell? They have only one barbell, no bands, no chains. Well, I might need to rotate a Romanian deadlift in every now and then for them. In place of the good morning, I wouldn't do it for long periods of time to help with the overuse issue. You can rotate bars on movements. That's the easy one. That's one reason I love all the conjugate type stuff that we do. You could rotate bars. We're doing a different movement that's still working more or less the same muscles. Similar movement pattern, but it is different enough that we can avoid overuse. Rotating in bands or chains, or rotating the two back and forth. Less overuse. Particularly, we start thinking of those bottom stretch positions on a lot of tendons. Using big full range of motion straight weight can accrue overuse and get tendons inflamed. When you take a band or a chain, you're normalizing the strength curve more instead of going with what you're stuck with straight weight. We unload the very hardest part with still a challenging weight that's still stimulating things, but then we're normalizing the strength curve. So we're still getting similar levels of muscle recruitment. We're putting a little less stress on those joints and tendons at those deeper positions at the bottom of a movement. Can help alleviate that. It's one of the reasons on conjugate system we rotate maxes all the time. People are like, oh, these maxes are dangerous. Not really. Not with decent form. And if you're rotating them all the time, the overuse concerns for maxes goes away. Rotate variations. They're easy problems to solve. And what's the other biggest one? We take all these factors and put them together, but here's our big one. Optimizing your training volume. Right? Optimizing your training volume is saying, what's the amount of volume I need to do to maximize my results or get close to without pushing myself into overuse issues? And that's what you need to do. Quit listening to these people who are telling you to do 30 sets for a body part per week, or that you need it, or you should, that's necessary for maximizing growth. We're arguing about a 1%, a hypothetical 1%. Sane training volumes, right, which I've discussed in detail in these breakfast chats already. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.